Good morning, good afternoon, or of course even good evening, depending on where in the world, my friend, you are tuning in to us from right now. I'm Julian, this is Doing English, and it is morning here in Tokyo, and what a morning! The sun is shining, it is beautiful outside. Polite English, casual English, formal English, informal English. Wow, you've got a lot to learn. Are these things all the same? Are casual English and informal English the same? Polite English and formal English, are they the same? No, unfortunately not. I think this is one of the big things that tends to get misrepresented in many teaching materials, especially textbooks, and especially the so-called business English materials. First off, I'm going to say that business English textbooks and business English materials generally aren't business English. They're actually corporate English. Very, very different, not the same thing, because people do not speak to their colleagues in the office in the way that is portrayed in those textbooks most of the time. But the way that native speakers use this kind of polite English versus casual English versus formal English versus informal English is extremely complicated, and that's the bad news. There is no fixed rule for this, and to one extent, it is a simple case of, with certain people you need to be more polite, therefore you use polite language. If you're writing a formal letter, you're going to want to use formal English for that letter. If you are, in a situation, for example, you're in court, defending yourself against a crime that you didn't do, you're going to want to use polite English. These situations are really, really obvious. What is not so obvious, I think, is that a lot of the time we will mix polite English, casual English, formal English, informal English in certain ways to have very specific effects, to give impact to the certain things that we are saying. A really good example of this is the Doing English Plus lesson from this week. And this is an example of a certain kind of conversation that we've covered a few times now. And there is a character talking to his boss. Basically, the situation is that he gave a presentation. He gave a presentation in English, and that presentation went totally and utterly wrong. And he's now discussing what went wrong with his manager. Now, depending on what country you come from, you might think that the dynamics, the balance between formal, polite, casual, informal English in this conversation were very simple. If you are a Japanese English learner, for example, you will expect to always speak to your senior in a much more polite manner than your senior will speak to you. Not so in the UK. And this conversation is a fantastic example of that, because the boss, Mr. Ahmed, is very, very polite, very, very formal, whereas his junior, whose name I have completely forgotten, it slipped my mind, John. Was it John? We're going to go with John. It might not be John, but hey, doesn't matter. Is speaking in a very casual, very quite informal way. But then Mr. Ahmed, at a certain point in the conversation, wants to give impact to what he's saying. He wants to really emphasize a point. And suddenly he changes from being very polite and very formal to being very, very informal. This does things to the conversation, and I guess it's almost a form of manipulation. You're manipulating the conversation with the words that you use and the formality of the language that you use, to manipulate the listener, to understanding and to receiving in a certain kind of way. I understand what I'm saying here is very, very abstract, but once you reach the intermediate to advanced level, and most people here in doing English are at the advanced level, the thing which is going to separate you from the rest, the thing that's going to put you above everyone else, is the ability to manipulate the way, the words you use, the language you use in this kind of way, and also to understand those very subtle nuances in meaning and why we use the kinds of language that we do. This is something which I go into incredible amounts of detail in doing English Plus. It's something that I am studying myself at the moment, and I'm dedicating quite a lot of time every day to reading about this as an academic subject. And you can probably see in the background all the books I've got. A lot of these are to do with this kind of how people use conversation discourse and conversation analysis, so that I can help you guys in the Doing English Plus program to do this better yourself. And polite English, casual English, formal English, informal English. This is a very interesting aspect of that. The tip here for you in this video, because I do want everybody to take something out of this. If you're not a Doing English Plus member, you should be. But what you can do to start getting better at this is to start noticing how people use and how people manipulate the formality of their language to do interesting things with the language. It all starts with just, paying attention to what people are doing. And hey, if you want to speed up the process, get on over to Doing English Plus. This is a topic that I am absolutely fascinated with, and I will almost definitely come back to again. So if you have any questions about this topic, that is polite English versus casual English versus formal English versus informal English, if you have any questions about this, any comments, anything at all, just go down below this video, pop it into the comments box. And if there are good questions, if there are good comments, I'll use those for future videos. Right. If you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. Out of focus. There we go, in focus. If you didn't like today's video, give it a thumbs down. But either way, do take a moment to give some feedback on this video. If you're new to the Doing English channel, take a moment to subscribe. There's a bar just here at the bottom. Click it and you will be able to subscribe. There's a new video from me every day, 5 p.m. JST, which is 8 a.m. GMT. Don't miss the next one. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you and goodbye. This is Doing English, and it is morning here in Tokyo, and what am I can't talk.